Our culture doesn't respond very helpfully to sexual abuse, in my opinion. There's a lot of moralizing and talk, but a real lack of clarity around why it happens, why are we vulnerable to it, what to do about it. And I believe that's partly because we're not allowed to acknowledge just how damaging reckless sexuality can be, even for grown-ups who are consenting. And on the one hand, you have people who say, they have strict beliefs. Sex should only take place in marriage and that married sex is always holy. And on the other, there's like this yelling that any suggestion of limits to what is healthy around sex is inherently stupid and evil. There's very little that's taught or discussed publicly between these two poles. And as someone who has suffered with this moral vacuum and who has worked with hundreds of women demoralized by how that attitude plays out in their relationships, in their health, in their life path, in their hearts, I believe it needs to be said that trauma, and especially childhood trauma, drives a lot of reckless sex. And sex that is generated by trauma is inherently hurtful to everyone who comes near it. The victims, the perpetrators, and hurt people who volunteer to participate because they're really just in a trauma-driven fog of unconsciousness, masquerading as, they're being cool about whatever, or they're being seductive, or they're being nice. They don't want conflict. So all of this, a history of sexual abuse in a culture that can't be clear about what is okay and how do you recover from that, how do you continue to have relationships, sets up people with childhood PTSD for disaster, okay? My letter today is from a woman I'll call Marin. And she writes, "Hi, Anna. I grew up in a home with alcoholic parents and a big brother who was sexually abusing me and my sister. My parents lived a dishonest, never present, emotional mess marriage. Life was confusing for me growing up. I never learned how to put loving boundaries up for myself. I think because I didn't know how." All right, I'm going to circle things on the letter here. I'm going to read all the way through, Marin, so we can hear what you're saying. I'll be circling things to come back to on a second reading so that we can talk about what's happened to you, and I think I can help you change what's happening. All right. So you write, "I've been running and suppressing my life and emotions the first 25 years, moving around a lot, having different boyfriends, many different boyfriends, more than I can count, I'm afraid. I'm the opposite of careful when it comes to partying, alcohol, sex, and partners. Anything and everything has been the case. The first boyfriends were pretty okay and respectful, but the relationships are getting worse and worse. I'm not having any good or loving sexual encounters. It's like my system is wired wrong and is working destructively for me. When I turned 25, my life broke down. I got deeply depressed and burned out, having panic attacks every night, and had absolutely no idea why I felt that. I was completely out of my body, super unaware of what really mattered to me, refusing to take help. I was limping through life, relying on whomever could manage to take care of me, mostly my parents, who also didn't seem to have any idea of why their daughters were so miserable. Every night I asked the angels to come and take me home. Life's been too heavy, and I didn't know what to do with it. I feel like reality came knocking on my door and said, hey girl, it's time to do some healing now. Because I was experiencing hell on earth. Many years have gone by feeling like this, slowly gaining some energy and clarity as I begin asking existential questions and looking at everything. I also told the whole family about the abuse, including my brother, who says he can't remember. My sister and I spoke about it for the first time then as well, and now there is a family crisis, of course. My sister is experiencing a similar life as me, exhaustion, and having no clue about healthy boundaries and a lot of stress. Until recently, I've been really social and amiable. I had a lot of friends and connections, and I was really outgoing. Now I'm hiding because I feel disgusted by my life and my behavior when I look back. I'm so ashamed and sad that I put myself through situations where men use me as a toy, and I'm ashamed of having more partners than I can count. I feel that I love myself, but only to that point where a man enters my life and suddenly I have no control over what happens anymore. I'm turning 33 soon, and life is still far from harmony. I think you can guess what type of charming men I'm drawn to. And it's funny because I always tend to bring out the absolute worst in them too. They become the biggest a-holes to me, even if they, in the beginning, seem sweet and affectionate. I'm aware, though, that this might be my magical thinking and not the actual reality of who they are. I have really good eyes. My sight is amazing, but it's like I can't see the world as it is despite that. I feel like I have broken glasses when it comes to love. And of course, this affects everything in my life. Having no peace in my body or mind makes me not so nice to hang around with. Most of my friends left some years ago. Neither have I been able to stay at the same job for more than a year before I'm utterly bored or feeling like a bird in a cage. 1 year ago, I got help from a doctor and therapist, and it was relieving. I want to experience love in this life, but I have no idea how. Do you have any suggestions on what I can do with this mess of a life? Sorry for the English. Marin's from another country. And for this really low vibe email. Not at all, Marin. I want to stop telling this story. I want it to be gone. But there are a lot of tears left and a lot of anger and resentment against God. Why? I or someone brought a whole lot of lessons upon me, but it needs to get easier, or I really need to understand it, meaning life, better. Thank you for all your work and what you're sharing. Much love and kind regards, Marin. All right, Marin. Oh, bless you. This is not a low vibe email. This is a high vibe email. This is the email of a person who has been struggling, who has made a decision to reach out for something new and different with a willingness, without knowing like what's that going to involve. But the act of courage it takes for any of us when we do that, when we say, I need some help, can you help me do this, is so beautiful and noble. So just, I honor you, Marin. You're doing great. This was a really beautiful move to send a letter and ask for help. Also very courageous for you to do this on YouTube. And from time to time, I like to remind commenters, because there's always people who they don't seem to realize that the people who write the letters are real people who are reading the comments too. And they got the nerve up to send a letter. So what I ask everyone is please add your love and support for Marin, who's trying to make this change. And if anybody is judgmental, we're going to take you out of the community so fast. Don't do it, all right? This happens to so many people, and I've been there too. I understand. All right. So alcoholic parents. Why is it that alcoholic parents are in all the stories these days? I had that too. Maybe we're drawn to each other, but there is such a connection between the parents who, what alcohol takes away from their ability to parent, and the I don't know what it is, the genetic and spiritual void in them that drives them to drink, that leaks into the whole family and creates this hunger for love. Oh my goodness, it's bigger than all of us, but luckily goodness is bigger than that. So I've got you here. You were sexually abused by a brother. I'm so sorry. It was your sister too. I'm so sorry for her too. There's a silver lining here in that you two have talked, and now you know it's really real, no matter what anybody says, that they don't remember it or they can't deal with it, which is really normal in families when they are forced to confront what was actually going on, because it's a parental failure, right? To have this going on, and they were too out of it to tune in. Something's not wrong. Marin is sad, Our son is acting strange. What's going on? Parents who are awake and tuned in can show up and notice something and intervene. And I'm not saying everybody's perfect or everybody should have detected everything bad that happened, because I'm sure we have so many people in the audience who did their best. But being an alcoholic, as we understand it these days, it's something that people can't control at the time they're in it. And then there comes a day maybe when some of them will recover. And hopefully if they do, they will catch up with their feelings about what they missed. I had an alcoholic mom, and I used to think she must not love me. She must totally not care about me or think I'm worthwhile because of all the things she didn't support me with or protect me from. And learning about alcoholism, I went to Al-Anon for many years, and learning about it really helped me understand it was terrible. It fits the pattern of a family with alcoholism, but it was nothing personal. I guess the jury's out a little bit. There's a little bit the way she treated kids different. It does feel a little bit personal, but largely the neglect and being drunk, it wasn't about me. It was just something that she could not control. And I do believe she would have done much better if she possibly could. And I'm sure she felt really bad about it. It's all past tense with her, and I have so much more peace about it now. And gradually over the years, I feel almost like my relationship with her is healing, even though she hasn't been alive since 1994, which coincidentally, it was about the same couple of weeks that I got the daily practice that I teach. Well, it's not a coincidence. I was in so much pain about her death and the end of hope that this was going to work out and a whole bunch of other things in my life. I had to do something to get free of all these feelings inside. So I'm going to talk about that a little later, but let's go through your letter. So once you grew up, all that confusion, you don't know how to live, you don't know how you're supposed to do that. Yeah, to actually parent kids and help them into adulthood, there's a lot of talk about how to manage sexuality, how to manage relationship. All of that totally is supposed to happen. And if it's not happening, and if parents are in denial and there's just secrets and shame and hiding all over the place, what else were you going to do? You weren't loved. And here's the thing about young romance. It feels like love. It feels like it promises that you're going to finally be met, that you're finally going to be cared about and kept company, in that deep way that everybody needs. So it seems like that. And then if the, youthful relationship, like in your teens, of course it's not, it doesn't, and it can't possibly be a super nourishing, stable relationship because of the immaturity going on. So then what do? In order to keep the thing that feels like love coming, you get more seductive, you get more casual about it, you drop the inhibitions and the boundaries, because you can always get attention if you'll just be very casual about it, right? So I know, and there's just something about an abusive alcoholic family that just primes a person for this kind of thing, to just get totally hooked into sexual relationships as the nearest thing that you can get to love. And the trouble is, it'd be great, it would be one thing if you could just finally go, okay, I'm ready to get real love now and I'm just going to stop. But it just takes so much from you. There is so much pain in the way that love walks away. There's a lot of societal judgment about it. You probably dealt with some of that. I don't know where you lived. I'm my age and where I lived, there was kind of a mix of like, there should be no judgment at all, or there should be only judgment about the whole thing. So it was just like you had to kind of like hide and try to get your emotional connection met any way you could, by hook or by crook. So whatever you went through, I just understand it's a primal need, like you must be loved. You must have people who believe in you, and this is the closest proximity. I don't blame you at all for seeking it in boyfriend after boyfriend. And then it doesn't work out. And I know you were hoping it would turn into love, and it just seems like it could every time, right? We like misread the cue time and time and time again, but it's not the cue we're getting. And in fact, if they were sort of feeling inclined to love us and stay with us at first, the trauma symptoms showing up, they show up, and people can feel it. And it makes it very difficult to love us and very difficult to stay with us. And so a person gets left a lot. And so that happens, and the pain piles up, and the self-attack, and the shame, and soon you get to this feeling that you have, this depression, this feeling like, can I just get out of this life? That's where it leads. That's where it leads, the desperate need and real need for love. It's real. You needed it. You didn't get it. So part of you is just going to keep trying to return to the scene of the crime and see if you can get it this time. What else are you going to do? Sit there alone? When you've been hurt that many times by something, sitting alone can feel unbearable. But I'm going to teach you how there actually is a way forward where you can stop the madness. You can stop the madness. You can calm your life, and you can begin to allow a clearer path to show itself to you. All right. So I just want to go through what you said. That voice that said it's time to do some healing now, that's a good voice. Take it seriously. Accept that it was a divine voice coming and calling you up out of this. So many great souls became great in the fire of the suffering of the nature that you're going through. There are saints who have been through this. It's okay. You can come through on the other side of this. All of it is completely, something that a person can put behind them. You can put it behind you. You can change. Healing is possible. So never fear. You are not ruined. You're not hopeless. You're just very, very hurt right now. And it's kind of like if you had sort of fallen down a hill covered with rocks and cactus. I grew up in Arizona, so I think of rocks and, you fall into a cactus, it's horrible. But that's kind of what it's like to end up in a relationship that just turns out to be horrible and you're not loved. It's like that. It's like you fall down a bunch of rocks and cactus and you're hurt and you're dinged up. And then you try to get up on your feet and you're limping through life. I get it. It's like you're, half broken trying to go forward. And then, comes this belief like I have to act like I'm okay and have it together or nobody's going to like me, because this vicious circle is going on. So just like right here, right now, you get to like put down that burden. You don't have to be healed yet. You can limp right now. You can just sit there and have the wounds, because yes, it hurts. It hurts. And love is meant for you. You were born to be loved. It's coming for you. But the frenetic energy of the pursuit of love that's driven by trauma is what's blocking it right now. It might take a little time. Okay, so what you said, you're naturally very social and amiable, and that means that probably is coming back, this darkness and heaviness and shame. This is not who you are. It's how you're feeling right now. It's your response to what you're going through, and it's just totally okay. It's okay to have those feelings. You're saying that the men begin sweet and affectionate, but then they turn horrible. You're not responsible for bringing out the worst in them. One thing, all relationships, and dating especially, when you're dating and you're trying to find out if something is kind of meant to be, if this is the one, a sign will be that you'll both become slightly better versions of yourself. So first of all, almost all of them will not do that for you. So it's okay. It's okay that they become a worse version of themselves. With your trauma kind of like active in you right now, it probably is hard to deal with, honestly, right? I've been hard to deal with. It's hard to deal with. It's triggering. It feels like a lot to take onto somebody's plate, and they want to get out of it. But because of your abandonment and attachment wounds are just so active right now, it's kind of like, we have opossums here in the United States, and once when I happened to be going through a hard time, I saw a little opossum about this big on the street, and it had been hit by a car. It was alive. I don't know if it was going to be okay, but it was sitting there in shock and going, ah, ah. And I was like, little possum, I feel that way too right now. I feel that way too. And I guarded it to help it walk off the road. Gosh, I hope it was okay. So long ago that it wouldn't still be alive now, but I just think of that possum all the time. It was like a little totem of how I was hurt inside, just walking through life. So tender. And that is exactly when help arrived. Help arrived. I think sometimes we can't be helped on something so profound. Sometimes. I'm not going to make a rule about this. It's certainly true for me. We can't be helped until we really get to that point where we're just like, God, I do not know what to do. I'm completely out of options. Everything I've tried has left me high and dry. I just don't know what to do. And things are getting worse. I circled that where you say it's gradually getting worse. Okay? That's the sign. That's the sign that you are right. It's time. It's time. Once you see that happening, so getting worse, that's a sign of addiction. And I never think that like our struggles with relationships are perfectly analogous to a substance addiction, but we might as well use that metaphor right now because the recovery process is similar. So if somebody had a problem with alcohol, we're talking about alcohol, and they wanted to get better, the first thing they would do is stop drinking. So you can do that. You can stop seeing men for right now. You can stop dating. A lot of people just say, I'm going to take a year. I might take more time after that, but for right now, I'm going to take a year. And I'm going to fill this year. Once you know, like, I'm not going to date this year, it's like a huge pressure comes off. And then a whole bunch of withdrawal comes. It's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get that validation I get from it? How am I going to get loved? And you're going to create a space where, even though at first it feels like scary and sad and you're sitting alone on Saturday night, very soon, life begins to spring up like flowers in your life. Soon it's like springtime comes for the other parts of your life that are good for you. Friends, spiritual and emotional support through therapy, 12-step groups, healthy activities, exercise, doing things that give you joy. I'm not trying to simplify it. I've always, I hear like people who don't have trauma and they're like, take a bath. That's self-care. And I'm like, self-care for me takes so much more than a bath. It takes so much more than a bath. So I use these techniques every day. I was really like at the end of my rope, and it was like a lot of it was about a guy at the time. I couldn't cope with it. I just couldn't deal with how I felt when I really faced the reality that like he was never coming back. And I learned, I was shown how to write my fears about that, my resentments at him, at myself, at God, at everybody. I learned how to write those and ask for them to be removed. And I'm just, you mentioned God in here. I'm a God person. I've created my techniques and the course for them in a way that's, religion, spirituality neutral. However you are out there, you fit it to yourself. But you're a God person. I'm a God person. I ask for my fear and resentment to be removed. And oh, did I ask? I asked like face down on the ground, crying so many times. And you know what? It got better. It got better. So this course I teach, it's called The Daily Practice. It's free. You learn it, you try it, takes about an hour. And once you take it, you're on my mail list and for people who have taken it, and I will send you reminders every 2 weeks to come join me on free Zoom calls. And wherever you are in the world, there's usually a time that you can come at least once a month. And then if you want to do more, we have like a membership where people do it all the time, and lots of good support. But I needed a technique that would relieve that intense pain and grief and just inner freak out that comes when you finally stop doing something that you depended on for fulfillment, but you hit the end of the road of it being doable anymore. It's too destructive. I recognize where you are. It's a beautiful and powerful point in the path where you are right now. And I hope you'll just sort of take my hand here and let me assist you across the divide to where things start to get easier. While you do that, all other options are on the table, just everything but dating. And I encourage you, it must include friendship, it must include joy, and it must include being with people who are safe and you can tell the truth and they understand. So that's why I say therapy, 12-step groups, membership with me, whatever it is. You're 33 years old. That's a really common time, somewhere around like end of the 20s, beginning of the 30s. It's a really common time for people to sort of, have to be confronted with the way their trauma has been driving them has hit the end of the road. Like, that's it. We can't go any farther with this coping mechanism. It's time to heal yourself, girl. You heard the voice inside, and it's true, and it's right. You have good judgment. I love this letter. I love your high vibe. I'm rooting for you all the way. If anybody watching this feels like you're ready to set yourself up with a period of withdrawal from the problem and healing from within, I've got a video lined up to support you. It's right here, and I will see you very soon.